Welcome to the Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens podcast. I'm Brandon Jaffe. Join us as we explore relationship and mental health issues by weeding out the trends in the mental health industry to uncover what truly works in improving our emotional well-being and relationships. At Inspired Resolutions Counseling, we specialize in providing interventions and resources for families with teens, focusing on topics such as teen mental health, parenting challenges, and family dynamics.
In today's episode, I'm going to discuss addiction. And for many of you parents, you're perking up because it's a hot topic. It's one of those things that comes in our center doors quite often, and we get a lot of phone calls about. But I'm not going to talk about the use of drugs and the addiction of teens. I'm actually going to talk to you parents who are addicts. Now, some of you may be in recovery. Some of you parents maybe are unaware that you're an addict, and some of you are aware, and there's varying degrees of addicts. But any of you who think that you might be an addict or know that you are an addict, please listen to the message of today's podcast. I had a session recently with an amazing father, somebody who is totally flawed and has made lots of mistakes, but he has a true desire to do better. And for that, I give him a lot of credit. And so one of the discussions that came up in talking with this client is a discussion that comes up often when I'm working with addicts. And that's the mentality that I want you to have. When you realize that you're an addict, I want you to actually separate that and look at it as I have an addict inside me. And that addict inside me has taken over my decision making. It has taken over my personality. It has taken over what I believe about myself. And it's really important when you're on this journey of recovery or trying to find recovery that you have this distinction. Now, we have a lot of people who talk about addiction being not just a mental health disorder, but a medical disorder. And I could go on and talk about that for hours. And there's some ins and outs that are important there. But for right now, I'm talking about a mentality that I want you to have so that you can be a better parent, so that you can walk alongside your children in sobriety, in recovery, that is effective, influential, and good. When you think of it as, I have this addict inside me, and this addict is constantly fighting for power, fighting to take control of me, then you're in a mindset to battle that. And so the next piece of this mindset is I want you to think of it as the addict inside me is kind of like cancer. Now, I've had family members who've had cancer. I've had good friends who've had cancer. And what I've learned, and for those of you who are in the medical field, if I've got this wrong, I apologize. But from what I've gathered, there's only a few ways basically to get rid of cancer. Number one, obviously, you can prevent it, right? But once you become an addict, you haven't done the preventing thing. And sometimes you can't even prevent cancer. But once the cancer is there, you can either cut it out, you can burn it out with chemicals, you can starve it. With those three things, obviously, if we think of the addict inside of us as being a cancer-like entity, then you're not going to burn it out. You're not going to cut it out. Therefore, the only thing you can do is starve it. And I think that thinking of it this way is really important for the recovery process. Now, it's not just drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex that feeds this cancer inside of you, this addict inside you. It's behaviors and decisions. Anytime you make an unhealthy behavior or decision that is seeking instant gratification, for instance, you're feeding the addict inside you. Anytime your pride comes before doing the right thing, you're feeding the addict inside you. When I talk to people about this, my clients about this, it takes some time, but they're able to start to see, oh, okay, there are definitely behaviors and decisions that I make, attitudes that I take on that feed the addict inside me. And then there are the decisions that are more long-term, more built towards building a healthy life, building the people I love around me up, that kind of starve and don't feed that addict inside. And so in working with addicts, I've often come across addicts who are in recovery, they're sober, but their personality hasn't changed. Their blaming of others has stayed kind of the same. Their maybe hostile nature, they're being quick to anger hasn't really changed. And they have a hard time looking at it because they've done so much work to get sober and kind of stop the big behaviors that they feel really good and justified in some of the continued unhealthy attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs that they carry. In this discussion that I recently had, I think that was kind of what was going on, is that this particular client, as a father, had to make the decision to address some of the more perpetual addict type behavior that's not easy to put your finger on, that can be justified and explained away as not having to do with the addict inside you. If you are an addict and you are in recovery, life's different for you. You have an extra duty to make sure that you don't allow not just the drugs and alcohol and really, really unhealthy behaviors to come back into your life, but that you put yourself in check on a constant basis so that you can be healthy for your loved ones, especially if you're a mother or a father. I think that when you make the decision to really deep dive into the recovery world, to take care of all of those behaviors that might affect who you are as a loved one, who you are as a parent, then it's time to make a list. Write down all of the decisions that you make that are kind of coming from that addict part of you. And it's going to be hard. It'll take you probably a couple of months to get the full list. And sometimes you're going to want to tell yourself, oh, well, okay, I can see how that's the addict making. But this time, here's the justifications. Here's why it's not actually the addict inside me. And the moment you say something like that, put it down on the list. And it's even more important for a parent who is in recovery to make sure that they are taking accountability, that they are remaining calm, that they are taking a look at their own list of character defaults on a regular basis. Not to the point that you're beating yourself up, but so that you catch really quickly if you are kind of sliding and slipping back into allowing the addict inside you to take over. And that means you're going to have to do a lot of letting things go that feel unjust, that feel unfair, that feel unequal. Fairness, justice, and equality is something I talk about a lot. And it's even more important for the parent who is an addict to let go of and not seek out fairness, justice, and equality in parenting and marriage and all of your loving relationships. Now, there are some obvious instant gratification addict type decisions that people make, right? Like drinking too much or the lying and the manipulation, and all that needs to go away. That's obvious. But for instance, in this case, this is something that I actually run into a lot with families, not just people who are addicts, but there's this dynamic where often, and I hate to say that, I hate to be chauvinistic, but often it's the wife or the mother who's angry because the father and husband isn't driving well or is using the phone while driving. And I can't tell you how often I have that discussion in my office. And with that one case, because that came up recently, that decision, it's not like my decision to use my phone while driving means that I'm an addict, but the addict inside you is making the decision to use that phone because, hey, it's wrong, but in this case, it's not, and I'm being extra careful. But your kids are in the car. The addict inside you is making the decision to use that phone and then minimize the importance and the wrongness, so to speak, of you using your phone while driving. Some of the not so obvious decisions, like the one that I'm talking about in terms of driving with your phone, it's those impatient decisions that you make, the impatient reactions, I don't want to wait, so I'm going to do it now. And It's those decisions you make that kind of deep down you kind of know that they're wrong, but you justify it because it's not that big a deal. You minimize the possible consequences. And then also those decisions of, I want to be seen and appreciated. I need to be held up for all the work that I do so that I can keep being good, right? That putting the spotlight on you. The mother, the father, the husband, the wife that is in recovery. Let's go of those needs, because those type of reactions, holding those close, feed the addict inside you. Now, what's interesting is getting rid of these for any person, for any relationship, is going to be healthy and good and right. And again, I really appreciated the person that I was seeing, because I think the work that they're doing is incredible. And we talked about, look, as a father, whether I'm in recovery or not, I need to ask myself, what is my role? What is my role as a father? What are the first one or two things that make up who I am and what I am in that role as father? I would challenge any parent to ask this of yourself first, because a lot of times we make reactionary decisions, and reactionary decisions feed the addict inside. But we make these reactionary decisions based on our ego. And so as a father, I personally know that first and foremost, I need to protect and I need to provide. That's the most basic role as a father. Now, I know we live in a day and age where those roles are shared and where that might not be the foremost role. But for me, my first and foremost role as a father is to be a protector and to be a provider. With the addict, what might happen is you take on that role of protector, and then the addict inside you convinces you to kind of go above and beyond in that protector mode, and you allow your anger and you're lashing out at others, and you begin to justify unhealthy behaviors because it sounds like the big bad protector. The protector doesn't look at their phone when they're driving. The protector doesn't create chaos in the home or outside of the home that might potentially lead to an unhealthy or dangerous situation for the family. So the protector does a lot of behind the scenes work to keep things cool, to keep things calm, to keep things safe. The provider role. The addict will take that provider role and convince you to give up time with your family. Will convince you that making money and those decisions you made to be at the office extra or go on the golf trip that you didn't really need to go on, or there's all these decisions that you make in the name of being provider that aren't actually about providing. You've got to ask yourself as the provider, when does my earning and providing surpass just earning and providing for my family and become an egotistical, I want more, I need to be more thing? Because provider role is about providing enough resources so that your family, your loved ones, your children can thrive, can even be comfortable. But you've got to ask yourself, at what point am I using that role as an excuse to do things that are unhealthy for myself and my family? The addict, like I said before, the addict inside you will take both of those roles and try to take you into a realm where you can convince yourself, I'm making these unhealthy decisions because I need to provide and protect, but you're actually going beyond in a way that makes it unhealthy, that makes it all about you, yourself, your instant gratification, your ego. Being a father, I'm speaking to everybody, but I'm kind of speaking to fathers because that's obviously what I relate to the most. If you are a father who is an addict, if you're a parent who is an addict, please take a look at not just being sober from the substance or the behavior that you're addicted to, but take a look at all of the behaviors that might be feeding, perpetuating, and growing that addict inside you. And then write it all down. And then also make a list of the decisions, the mantras, the behaviors that starve that addict inside you. And be very intentional of increasing the list of behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs that starve the addict, and reducing the behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs that perpetuate and make the addict inside you more powerful.
The Hope for Parents with Struggling Teens podcast is an Inspired Resolutions production, hosted by Brandon Jaffe, edited and mixed by Natalie Atkinson, music by Natalie and Sean Atkinson. Inspired Resolutions Counseling is based in Yorba Linda, California. Whether you're interested in joining our group, seeking therapy services, or exploring more of our resources, you can find us on our website, Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube at Inspired Resolutions Counseling.